Keanu Reeves used to enjoy long walks in the city. They allowed him to feel the rhythm of life around him, to observe the passers-by, and, most importantly, to remain a simple man among millions of others. One cool evening, when the sun had already disappeared behind the horizon and the streets were filled with yellow light from street lamps, a lonely dog caught his attention. The animal was sitting on the side of the road, looking carefully at everyone who passed by, as if trying to find someone familiar. The dog looked emaciated. Its fur was tousled and dirty, and it had a worn collar hanging around its neck. The animal had obviously been outside for a long time, looking for food or water. Keanu's heart sank. He had always had a weakness for animals, and this scene touched him deeply. He walked closer slowly so as not to scare it. The dog raised its head cautiously, but did not run away. Its eyes were a mixture of hope and fear. After assessing the animal's condition, Keanu decided that he could not leave it here. He examined the collar, but found no information about the owner. The phone number or name had been erased by time. Obviously, the dog had long been lost or worse, abandoned. Keanu knew he had to act. He took off his scarf and carefully wrapped it around the dog's neck, creating a makeshift leash. The dog did not resist, as if realizing that this man would not harm him. They walked together through the streets of the city. Keanu tried to find any clues. He looked at the advertisements on the poles, asked passersby, but no one recognized the animal. On his way, he stopped at a small store and bought a bottle of water and a bag of dog food. Right outside the store, he sat down on a bench, opened the food, and gave it to the dog. The dog eagerly gobbled up the food as if it hadn't eaten in days. This only confirmed his guess. The dog had been wandering the streets alone for a long time. While the animal was eating, Keanu watched it. There was something in its behavior that made him feel a deep connection. It was not just an animal. It was a living being who had experienced loss and loneliness. When the dog ate and rested for a while, Keanu decided to continue his search. He took several photos of the animal with his phone and posted them on social media, adding a text asking for help. "This dog is looking for his owner. I found him on the street, very thin and tired. If you recognize him or know whose he is, please let me know," he captioned the photo. The post quickly began to spread, as many people knew about Keanu's kindness and wanted to help. Later, he turned to animal shelters. Unfortunately, they could not provide any information. All the places were full, and the volunteers just sighed sadly, explaining that such dogs are found every day. This did not stop Keanu. He decided that he would not leave the animal to fend for himself. For several days, the dog lived in his house. Keanu took care of him, bought a new collar, fed him, and even bathed him. The dog gradually became calmer and more trusting. They walked together in the park, and Keanu was constantly looking for someone who would recognize his pet. But time passed, and no one responded. One day, when he was beginning to think that the dog would stay with him forever, he received a message. Someone wrote that they had seen an ad for a lost dog that matched the description exactly. The person attached a photo. It was the same dog. Keanu immediately contacted the owner. The voice on the other end of the line sounded excited and grateful. They agreed to meet in the park the next day. The evening before the meeting, Keanu looked at the dog, who was lying quietly at his feet. He had mixed feelings. Joy that the dog would be reunited with his owners, and a little sadness because he had grown attached to the animal over the days. But he knew he was doing the right thing. The dog had to return to those who loved and waited for him. The next morning, Keanu Reeves woke up earlier than usual. He felt a little tense but excited at the same time. Knowing that this day would be special for the dog, he carefully prepared for the meeting. The dog, who had already begun to respond to the name Keanu had temporarily given him, was lying by the bed, calmly watching every movement of his new friend. He seemed to realize that something was going to change today. Keanu prepared a delicious breakfast for the dog, and while he was eating, he decided to read the message from the owner again. It said that the meeting would take place in a local park, not far from the area where the dog was first found. The person who wrote had attached several photos of the dog in a happy family setting. These images filled Keanu's heart with warmth because he could see that the animal was truly loved. When it was time to leave, Keanu checked once again that everything was ready. The dog walked beside him, his tail wagging lightly from side to side, and his big eyes showed a mixture of curiosity and sadness. Together they walked through the streets of the city, which had already begun to come to life, and finally reached the park. It was one of those places where families met, walked their dogs, and enjoyed nature in the midst of city life. The sun was rising higher, flooding the park with soft golden light. Keanu stopped at a large oak tree, the agreed meeting place. He was a little nervous, but he tried to look calm, so as not to convey his state to the dog. A few minutes later, he saw a family approaching them, a man, a woman, and 2 children. They looked excited, but also a little tired, as if the last few days had been very difficult for them. When they got closer, the dog suddenly jerked forward. His tail began to move quickly, and his eyes lit up with joy. Keanu realized that these were the same people. The dog rushed to them, and his body was filled with indescribable energy. The children began to scream with joy, hugging the animal. The parents, full of emotion, knelt down, stroking their pet and wiping away their tears. Keanu stood aside, watching this scene. It was both touching and a little sad at the same time. He realized that he had made the right choice, but there was a slight tinge of sadness in his heart because of saying goodbye to the dog he had become attached to in this short time. After the first emotional moments, the family approached Keanu to thank him. They tried to explain in words how important this help was to them, but their eyes and gestures showed more than words could convey. Keanu noticed that the family's clothes were quite simple and worn out, and the children, although they looked happy, showed visible signs of a lack of resources in the family. The man used gestures and notes on his phone to tell the story of how the dog had run away during the storm. They searched for it for several days, but were unsuccessful. It was a big blow to them, because the dog was not just a pet, but a true friend who supported them in the most difficult moments of their lives. Keanu listened attentively, and his heart was tightening as he realized what this family had been through. He saw how they tried to look strong, but behind their smiles and gratitude was deep fatigue and sadness. He decided not only to return the dog to them, but also to help them in other ways. On the same day, Keanu secretly contacted local services and volunteers who supported families in difficult circumstances. He learned that not only had the family lost their dog, but they were also struggling financially after the head of the family had recently lost his job. Their house needed repairs, and their children did not have enough clothes or school supplies. Without telling the family, Keanu organized help. He paid for the repairs to their home, bought necessary items for the children, and even covered the cost of treating their dog, who needed vaccinations and checkups after spending time on the streets. He did all this anonymously, leaving notes with simple words of support. A few weeks later, Keanu received a message from one of the volunteers who helped the family. She told him how their lives had changed thanks to the support. The house was now warm and cozy, the children could go to school again, and the parents had found new opportunities to earn money. The dog no longer left their side, as if he also felt that they would never lose him again. Keanu smiled calmly when he learned about it. He knew he had made the right choice. This story was yet another proof of how even the simplest act of kindness can change someone's life forever. Although he never saw that family again, their gratitude and happiness left a mark on his heart, reminding him of the power of humanity and compassion. After Keanu learned about the changes in the family's life, his soul was filled with quiet joy. However, the story had an even bigger impact on him than he initially realized. He began to think more about how small acts of kindness like this can change people's lives and decided to make charity a bigger part of his daily life. A few weeks after meeting the family, Keanu happened to think of them again when he was walking through the same part of town. He decided to pass by the park where the touching reunion had taken place, and unexpectedly met a volunteer who was helping him organize assistance for the family. The volunteer shared the news. The family had not only managed to stabilize their lives, but had also started helping others. This inspired Keanu even more, and he decided that he wanted to be part of a larger change. He started with simple steps. He organized small fundraising campaigns for local animal shelters. He also started visiting these facilities regularly, talking to the volunteers and finding out what they were missing. In particular, he noticed that many of these organizations were often in critical condition due to a lack of funding and support. Once, during a visit to a shelter, Keanu noticed a dog that reminded him of the one he helped return to his family. This dog looked sad, as if he had already lost hope of finding a loving home. This made Keanu even more determined. He decided to make a short video telling the story of this dog and encouraging people to participate in animal adoption programs. The video quickly became popular, and as a result, the dog found a new family. This experience further confirmed Keanu's belief that his impact could be significant. Subsequently, he began to work with organizations that helped families in difficult life situations. He not only supported them financially, but also actively participated in their projects. His main goal was not just to help one time, but to create long-term solutions that could support people in difficult circumstances. Keanu also decided to launch a new initiative that would combine helping animals and people. He created a program where people experiencing emotional or financial difficulties could adopt animals from shelters. These animals became a kind of therapists who helped people feel needed and gave them motivation to keep moving forward. At the same time, the animals found new homes and love. One of the stories related to this program was particularly memorable to Keanu. It was the story of a war veteran who, after returning home, suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder for a long time and felt alienated from society. He was offered to take care of a dog from a shelter. This step became a turning point in his life. The dog helped him to restore his faith in himself and find a new meaning. The veteran not only managed to return to normal life, but also became a volunteer, helping others in similar situations. Keanu followed each of these stories closely. They inspired him to work even harder and invest even more resources in his projects. He began to use his popularity to draw attention to important social issues. He gave interviews in which he talked about the importance of empathy, support, and small acts that can have a huge impact. In addition, he continued to lead a normal life. He did not want his actions to be perceived as a PR stunt or a way to improve his image. For him, it was a personal calling. He found joy in helping others and seeing the results of his efforts. Every smile, every new beginning for someone else was the greatest reward for him. After a while, Keanu's initiatives gained international recognition. People from different parts of the world began to be inspired by his example and create their own projects. It became a real movement centered on the idea that even the smallest acts of kindness can change the world. However, Keanu himself remained humble and dedicated to his goal. He never boasted about his achievements, believing that he was only doing what every person should do. His life has become an example for millions, reminding us that humanity and compassion are what really matter. And although time passed and his life changed, he always returned to the moments that inspired him in the first place. He remembered the night he first saw the dog on the street and realized that this encounter was the beginning of everything. At the time, he did not know that a simple act of kindness would become the basis for a series of events that would change the lives of many people and animals. But now he knew for sure that it was the best decision of his life. Following the international recognition of his initiatives, Keanu Reeves began to receive numerous invitations to join various charitable projects. However, he decided to focus on developing his own programs, where he saw a real impact and benefit for society. Keanu realized that his best opportunity to help was to be not just a donor, but an active participant in each project. One of his new initiatives included creating educational programs for children from low-income families. Keanu realized that education is the key to the future, and many children do not get the necessary access to knowledge due to the financial difficulties of their families. He organized a series of workshops where children could learn the basics of programming, art, music, and even filmmaking. He taught many of these classes himself, using his experience in the film industry to motivate children to dream and achieve their goals. During one of these workshops, he met a boy named Tommy. He was only 10 years old, but he had a remarkable talent for drawing. His works, made with simple pencils on old sheets of paper, showed a depth of emotion and imagination that surpassed his age. Tommy told Keanu that he dreamed of becoming an artist, but his family could barely afford food, let alone art supplies or tuition. This meeting touched Keanu deeply. he decided to help Tommy realize his potential. He organized private lessons for him with famous artists and provided him with everything he needed to create. A year later, Tommy took part in a local art exhibition where his work was admired. One of his drawings was even purchased for a gallery, which was the first step towards realizing his dream. At the same time, Keanu continued to develop animal welfare programs. He realized that the combination of helping people and animals gives the best results. One day he learned about a shelter that was on the verge of closing due to financial problems. This shelter specialized in rescuing old or sick animals that had difficulty finding new homes. Many of these animals spent their last days there, receiving the care and love they needed. Keanu decided to visit the shelter in person. He spent a day with the staff helping to care for the animals and learned about their greatest needs. Afterwards, he organized a large charity event to raise funds to support the shelter. The event included an auction featuring items from Keanu's movies, as well as artwork created by children from his educational programs. The result exceeded all expectations. The shelter received enough funds to continue its work for several more years. In addition, it launched a campaign to promote a conscious attitude towards pets. It included a series of videos that showed how animals affect people's lives and how a responsible attitude towards them can change the world for the better. One of the videos told the story of a family that adopted a dog from a shelter and how it helped them cope with the loss of a loved one. This story went viral, and many people decided to visit local shelters after watching it. Keanu also started working with young people who were at risk. He organized sports and cultural events to help them escape the negative influence of the streets and find their way in life. One of these events was a summer camp for teenagers, where they could learn new skills, meet successful people, and realize that their future depends on their efforts. During one of these camps, Keanu met a girl named Layla. She told him how she dreamed of becoming a filmmaker, but didn't believe it was possible because of her social status. Keanu not only supported her dream, but also gave her the opportunity to work as an intern on the set of one of his films. This was the beginning of her career. A few years later, Layla made a short film that was recognized at an international film festival. She has always remembered Keanu as the person who believed in her when she couldn't. All of these projects not only helped people and animals, they created waves of positive change that spread further. The people Keanu helped started helping others, creating a chain reaction of kindness. It became a real movement that inspired thousands of people around the world. However, despite all his success, Keanu remained as humble and committed to his principles as ever. He continued to work quietly, avoiding unnecessary attention to his personality. It was important to him that the focus remained on those who needed help, not on himself. He always said that the real reward is seeing the changes that come from small acts of kindness. After another day of working on his projects, Keanu sat on a bench in the park where he had met a lost dog many years ago. He was looking at the sunset and thinking about how that one encounter had changed his life. He now knew that even the simplest act of kindness can have an incredible impact, and he was grateful to have had the opportunity to be a part of that process. After years of active work on his charitable projects, Keanu Reeves noticed that his ideas and initiatives were beginning to take on a global scale. People from all over the world were inspired by his example and created similar programs in their communities. This was the moment when Keanu realized that it was time to extend his influence to an even wider level. One day, he received an invitation to participate in an international conference on social change and humanitarian initiatives. The organizers wanted Keanu to share his experience and talk about the principles he used in his work. At first, he was hesitant because he was not used to public speaking in this format, but then he realized that it was a great opportunity to involve more people in his projects. During his speech, Keanu spoke not only about his achievements, but also about the challenges he had to face. He talked about the importance of empathy, perseverance, and belief in change. He paid special attention to the topic of collective responsibility, emphasizing that each person can contribute, even if it is a small gesture of kindness. His speech received loud applause, and after the event, many participants approached him to personally express their gratitude and learn more about his initiatives. After the conference, Keanu decided to create a global platform that would bring together people from different countries to implement joint projects. This platform was called the Kindness Network. It became an online platform where people could share their ideas, discuss the problems of their communities, and find partners to implement their projects. In addition, the platform had a special section for fundraising, where everyone could contribute to any of the projects presented. One of the first success stories of this platform occurred in Africa. A group of young activists from Kenya, inspired by Keanu's example, organized a program to support orphans who had lost their parents to epidemics and conflicts. They created an educational center where children could receive basic knowledge, nutrition, and psychological support. Thanks to Kindness Network, they were able to raise enough funds to expand their program and reach more children. Alongside the development of the platform, Keanu continued to work on his own projects. One day, he received a letter from a teacher in a small village in Latin America. She told him how his story had inspired her and her students to create a school garden where they grew vegetables and fruits for the local community. The teacher invited Keanu to visit them, and although his schedule was extremely busy, he decided to make time for the trip. When he arrived in the village, he was greeted like a real hero. The children sang songs they had written especially for him, and the teacher took him on a tour of the garden. Keanu was touched by what he saw. He realized that even in the most remote corners of the world, his example can change people's lives. Before he left a generous donation for the school and promised to help them build a library so that children could have access to books and knowledge. He also began to pay more attention to environmental issues. He supported several projects aimed at combating climate change, including initiatives to plant trees, clean up the oceans, and reduce the use of plastic. It was important to him that his impact encompassed not only people and animals, but the planet as a whole. One of his biggest projects in this area was a collaboration with an international organization that was working to restore forests in regions affected by deforestation. Keanu not only financed these projects, but also personally participated in planting trees. He often said that every tree is a new beginning, a symbol of hope and life. Another important aspect of his activities was the support of art and culture. He founded a foundation that helped young artists realize their ideas by providing them with the necessary resources and venues to showcase their work. The foundation also organized exhibitions, concerts, and theater performances that drew attention to social issues and inspired people to do good deeds. After a few years of work, Keanu realized that it was time to pass on some of the responsibility to his followers. He began to create regional offices of the Kindness Network, which were headed by local leaders. This allowed the projects to be more adapted to the needs of specific communities and respond more quickly to their challenges. One such office in Southeast Asia organized a program to help victims of natural disasters. Through their joint efforts, they were able to provide thousands of families with shelter, food, and medical care after a series of devastating typhoons. Seeing the results of this work, Keanu realized that his dream of a global network of kindness was becoming a reality. Despite all these achievements, Keanu remained true to his principles. He avoided undue attention to his personality and continued to work behind the scenes to help others shine. His goal was not to become a hero, but to inspire every person to become a hero in their own life and in their community. At the end of another busy day, Keanu was sitting in his home, looking at letters and photos from people whose lives had been changed by his initiatives. He realized that it all started with one small act of kindness, helping a lost dog. Now, this act has become a symbol of how one person can change the world. Years of work on numerous charitable projects and initiatives have changed not only the lives of others, but also Keanu Reeves himself. He saw how one act of kindness can generate a whole wave of positive change, and this inspired him to move on. His activities gradually became not just an example for others, but a real movement that changed the lives of millions of people around the world. One day, Keanu received an invitation from the United Nations to participate in a special program aimed at supporting sustainable development and combating global problems. The organization wanted him to act as a goodwill ambassador, using his influence and popularity to draw attention to the most pressing issues of humanity. Keanu thought about this invitation for a long time, as it required even more involvement and responsibility. In the end, he accepted, realizing that this was an opportunity to scale up his efforts. His first mission as ambassador was to travel to areas affected by climate change. Together with a group of experts, he visited island nations facing sea level rise, as well as regions where prolonged drought threatened the lives of local communities. Keanu met with local people, listened to their stories, and helped them find solutions. His presence attracted the attention of the international community, and as a result, many projects received additional funding. One of these trips had a particular impact on Keanu. In a small village on the edge of the desert, he met a woman named Amina. She was raising 5 children and struggling to survive in the face of constant water shortages. Amina told him how their community was struggling to get every drop and how many people had left the village because they could not continue living in such conditions. Keanu, moved by her story, decided to help. When he returned home, he organized a fundraiser to build a rainwater harvesting system in the area. His initiative received widespread support, and within a few months the system was installed. This allowed the residents not only to provide themselves with water, but also to restore agriculture, which was a real salvation for the community. Amina sent Keanu a letter thanking him for the fact that her children can now go to school instead of spending hours searching for water. Another important area of Keanu's work was creating educational programs for young people in developing countries. He realized that knowledge is the key to overcoming many problems and decided to focus on developing programs that would provide access to quality education for those who need it most. Together with international partners, he launched a platform that provided free access to online courses, learning materials, and mentoring support. One of these programs was aimed at preparing young women to work in technology. Keanu believed that gender equality is one of the most important conditions for sustainable development, and he wanted to help girls gain the knowledge that would open up new opportunities for them. The success of this initiative exceeded all expectations. Thousands of girls from all over the world were able to complete their studies and find jobs in high-tech companies. In addition, Keanu began to work more with the topic of mental health. He realized that many people, even in developed countries, suffer from depression, anxiety, and other psychological problems that often go unaddressed. He funded research in this area, supported organizations that help people with mental disorders, and even initiated the creation of a hotline that worked around the clock. Keanu paid special attention to war veterans. He knew how difficult it was for people returning from war to adapt to peaceful life. He organized special rehabilitation programs for them, which included animal-assisted therapy, sports, and professional retraining. These programs helped thousands of veterans find a new meaning in life and return to active social life. Over time, Keanu's initiatives began to cover even more areas. He supported research in renewable energy, invested in innovative medical technologies, and even helped preserve the cultural heritage of indigenous peoples. His activities have become so diverse that many people have begun to call him a new type of modern philanthropist who uses all available resources to achieve positive change. Despite all of these achievements, Keanu remained a man who knew how to appreciate the simple things. He still spent his evenings reading letters from people he had helped, walking in parks, and finding time for quiet reflection. One day, during another walk, he stopped at a small animal shelter where he had once found the dog that had changed his life. The shelter was now modernized and became a place where they not only cared for animals, but also conducted educational programs for children about responsibility and kindness.